6 stories high. Low income.
I guess I'm waiting for Kathy to come back.
10 million.
We are live.
Hand out.
Christine.
Okay, thank you.
Oops, I didn't say that.
This isn't televised, is it, Chester? It is?
She's coming down the hall. Well, they're live in here.
I wonder if I see you. Are we going to go over this? Do you know what this is? Oh, okay. It says UR1. I assume that's urban renewal. Okay.
Punch in time fine.
You live in a van.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, by golly. Well, welcome. It's a good ward. More the merrier.
Ready when you are, Kathy.
Yeah, she said that
So
everything
the
was
mics
ready.
are live. Yeah.
On record.
I call to order this Lincoln City Urban Renewal Budget Committee meeting of May 18th, 2015. Roll call, please, Kathy Stair.
Dick Anderson.
Here.
Stacy Baird. Jim Davis.
Here.
Michael Holt. Chester Norikis. Henry Quant.
Here.
Wes Ryan.
Here.
John Skipper. Roger Sprague. Susan Walke.
Here.
Kip Ward.
Here.
Jerry Warner. Don Williams.
Here.
And rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chandler?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman, and welcome back, everybody. Tonight we are wrapping things up with urban renewal, but we did have some follow-up items that we needed to discuss. 2 items in particular. You have a couple of handouts that UR1 and UR2, and I will be referring to those. The question came up during the last meeting regarding some of the projects, and specifically the undergrounding project, and whether or not it was an urban renewal type project. In 2000, Urban Renewal adopted their called the Year 2000 Development Plan. Its development plan for which we have been following for the last 15 years. There have been some updates to this, but the things that I will talk about today are still part of the core document. If you look on your first handout, you'll find that...
Wait, I'm not finding... I've got to find it first.
If you look at the top corner, it'll say UR1.
Yeah, that one says number 1, number 2.
Now, those ones are going to be for the city budget. You need the ones that say UR.
Oh, okay, I got it. Okay, never mind. I was looking at the wrong corner. Okay.
Okay.
I'm caught up.
Okay. You'll notice that on pages 2 and 3, it outlines the definitions. These are part of the definitions they have, and specifically item number 204 describes blighted areas and what the definition means for that. Now, I'm not going to go through all of that because it's rather lengthy, and I'm giving you that as a point of reference. The plan then sets out the mission statement and the goals and the objectives of the Urban Renewal Year 2000 Development Plan. Item number 401 on page 6 of this document states the mission of Lincoln City Urban Renewal Agency is to eliminate blight and depreciating property values in areas within the agency's jurisdiction, and in the process attract job-producing private investments that will improve property values, improve the area's visual quality, and establish a positive linkage between the year 2000 development plan and the Pacific Ocean, all in a manner which will be compatible with the city's natural and man-made setting. Now, to help fulfill that mission, the plan then lays out its goals and objectives, and in this case, I refer you to item number 402C, which is found on page 7. One of the goals that was established at that time is to place underground present overhead utility systems along the Highway 1 corridor and an area of maximum visual impact. So that was one of the goals to help meet the mission that was established in 2000. And then it went beyond that, where it identified specific projects to meet that goal. And if you look on page 12 and 13, item number 3, undergrounding existing pole-mounted utility systems is one of the projects that are identified as a way to meet the goals. And specifically on the next page, E, and then it lists the different projects that you have. For example, on Highway 101 from a distance of 100 feet north of 28th Street south to Fleet Street. Then it has kind of a catch-all. Item number E states, in such other locations along US 101 as agency funds will allow. Okay? So the reason I bring that up is to just mention that the undergrounding of the D Lake is consistent with the plan that was adopted in 2000. Now, it may be that there are people who think that the plan is wrong, that it doesn't accomplish what they think the goal should be, but what we are proposing is consistent with the plan that was adopted. And as mentioned before, this budget keeps the underground, the D Lake undergrounding project as a project, but delays it in favor of some other projects. And what we're really proposing on that one is to delay it until we have the next bond issue that will be in 2017 or 2018. And as we've discussed in the previous meetings, there are other projects that this budget proposes to do in its place, and then still leave some funding that's available for other projects to continue, or that ultimately could be used in another time for the undergrounding project. Okay, any questions on that?
Are you specifically talking about the D River? Is that what you're referring to?
It's we would be boring under the D River to put the power lines underground.
Because all that boring has been done, hasn't it?
No.
Oh, because there's all kinds of pipes sticking up out of the ground. I assumed that it had been bored.
Do you want to come up and talk about the pipe sticking up in the ground?
I don't know too much about those pipes, but I think that it's part of an ODOT project where they're putting an interconnect in between all their traffic signals.
Oh.
But other than that, I've just heard about it. I'm involved in it in any way.
Because they had, the reason I ask is because there were boring machines there, and I assumed that these were the beginnings of the boring operation. So, bad assumption, sorry.
As a matter of fact, we're still obtaining the easements for that.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
I wonder, would it be appropriate, or even if it's not, I wonder if we could make sure those members of the Budget Committee that aren't here tonight could make sure they got a copy of this and maybe highlighted those areas, because I think that helps a lot, because this topic of the undergrounding always seems to come up as an issue. And it might even be of interest to have one ready for the press so they can perhaps be updated from plan year 2000, so that showing the consistency.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Ward?
Mr. Olson, it mentions blight in here. I would assume that they had a definition of blight when they wrote this. Can you provide that definition?
Well, I think it's on that page. Well, it talks about blighted areas. Yeah, it's on that first page, 204. It gives a definition of blighted areas. And I think most people first think of blighted areas as a building that's in disrepair, whereas in the definition of blight could really be things that cause economic development not to happen. For example, an area that doesn't have a water and sewer available to it, that could be considered blighted too.
So do we subscribe to a particular definition of blight?
Yes. If you look on the handout on page 2, that is the definition that we're required to work under, because we adopted it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I apologize for not going through you a moment ago.
It's okay, Mr. Reyes.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Narcos?
I would support Committee Member Anderson's proposal that these handouts be supplied to committee members who are not here and the press as well.
There are a few extra copies. Can we mail them to the
Yeah.
absent members? Thank you. Thank you.
The second item that we wanted to bring up to you was actually a result of a change that the city budget committee made, that you made when you were acting as on the behalf of the city budget. If you recall, you had made a motion and approved that motion wherein the employees receiving memberships at the community center, that their departments would be charged for that. That affects this budget. And so if you look on the UR2 handout, as there's a couple things that we did on this that are deserving of note. First of all, when we looked at the amount that would be needed to transfer over into the community center funding, the first decision that we made was that rather than the full potential amount, we would base it on what is actually taking place, plus an additional 10% to give us a little padding. So the transfer represents total going into the community center of about $59,000. The second decision that we made is that we would not pull that from contingencies or fund balance, but instead we would ask the departments to find to adjust their budgets in order to absorb that cost. And so in the urban renewal budget, the total amount was $1,846. They decreased their regular salary budget by $846 and system maintenance other by $1,000, and then we increased the employee wellness line item to $1,846 to offset that. So that is, any questions on that? Okay. That is those are the two items that had been discussed. Before we talk a little bit about how you approved this budget, are there any questions pertaining to the urban renewal budget?
It has to do with the
No, and for anybody who's listening, let me just back up and talk a little bit about what those are, and then I'll answer your question. Under Oregon law, any difference between revenue and expenses, when revenue exceeds expenses, it goes into the fund balance. If it goes into the unappropriated fund balance, then the Urban Renewal Agency is not allowed to amend that budget and use that. And so there's two ways in which you can basically give yourself a little bit of a buffer. One is to create a contingency part of the fund balance, or an appropriated fund balance contingency. The second is to create an additional capital reserve. And so if you notice on the Urban Renewal General Fund, there is an additional capital reserve equal to $907,220. Now, essentially what that is, it's for capital projects, the purchase of equipments, installation of infrastructure, upgrades to infrastructure, whatever would fit into the Urban Renewal Agency's goals and projects. But there is not a specific project that's associated with that. Because of the size of that, if the staff or any of the city council members were interested in doing a project, we would need to bring that before the city council for their approval.
Mr. Anderson?
Madam Chairman, we went through some of the projects that we were looking at, Urban Renewal was looking at doing, and I noticed that this year we've not identified any that are ADA specific versus last year we had identified some. And I wondered if there was a reason for that, or am I reading this incorrectly?
Back up on this.
And if I can stay with that, because the other item then would be in the area of sidewalks. We had a item last year called sidewalks. This year, the only sidewalks I see is in the South Bay Park, Bay Area sidewalk. And so I'm a little concerned about our moving ahead with ADA, and since we've got items identified, why aren't we getting some of those done, and then always trying to push the connection of sidewalks?
Okay, so on page 6, there is, near the bottom of the page, there is ADA planning and compliance. And last year, there was $25,000 in that line item. And you see that just to the left in the column, just to the left of the 620 numbers. And that line item was specifically for hiring a consultant to work to get through that initial process of not developing the transition plan, but getting us to that point. And since that's taken place, and we have a staff person on board, then Urban Renewal didn't need to contribute anymore to that line item, so it was zeroed out for that reason. Then to the next page, near the bottom again, where it says ADA improvements, as you can see in that same line item to the left of the 6.3 numbers, was $20,000 allocated towards ADA improvements, and that was for improving existing infrastructure. There's never been any projects identified because we haven't finalized that transition plan. And so now that we have a staff person on hand, his job is to help with, they have a committee. His job then is to identify existing projects that need to be modified. And there were no requests this year from them, and there was no indication that that transition plan would be completed in this year. So we didn't just throw money in there just in case. We do have the money that was just talked about in the additional capital reserve. If a project does come forth, we have money to contribute towards it. And then the other thing was, just to remind you, that doesn't mean that we're not doing anything with ADA, and that we have 3 or 4 projects that we will be doing, and their ADA is always a part of those. So the new projects, we don't take out of that line item. We just assign those costs to the project. But for in future years, I think you'll see where Urban Renewal will be asked again to help contribute, probably along with Public Works and whoever else, towards projects that the transition plan identifies.
Okay.
Well, and then you have your second question was about sidewalks.
Right.
We did, again, we zeroed those out this year. We zeroed out both sidewalks and crosswalks for two reasons. One, there really wasn't anything identified, and a request there was an initial request from Public Works for just putting money in there, but they thought that the project that they were going to be doing, they were going to be able to do in this budget year, so that it didn't need to be carried over into next budget year. And then the fact that we're just in this new world of urban renewal. We've never been here before, where we just can't do every project that we can think of. And so this year, that's why the undergrounding was set aside, was because if we would have to use all of our money to do such a large project. So we don't want to just put money into those line items where we don't have anything identified. Again, we could pull something out if something comes up and there's an issue and it's a project, maybe it's a crosswalk that really needs to be addressed right now in the next budget year, we could afford to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Mr. Olson, before you leave, Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Atkins.
Okay.
on page 7, Mr. Olson, we've got nothing budgeted for Cultural Center. 63,40237.
That is correct. We don't have any projects identified this year for the Cultural Center, so we didn't just throw in there. In years past, we kind of sort of did that, just, well, let's put some money in there just in case. And this year, because of our funding, it's sort of a bare bones. There's a lot more zeros in this one than there has been in the past. So, however, if we do have the grant program for the Cultural Center, and that would be in the other budget, in the economic development budget. The name of it, let's see, it's the property rehab program part of the budget, and we do have money in there for our grant program, and the Cultural Center is part of that grant program, so that if things do come up and they want to do some improvement to the building, then we can offer a grant towards that.
Thank you.
See, now you stay up here and there are more questions.
Mr. Anderson.
Madam Chairman, I wonder, Mr. Olson, could you talk a little bit about, it's more of a policy issue. Help us understand, now that we're at the end, towards winding down with specific projects, limited funds on purpose, and most of the time from what I can gather, you contract out the projects, the work, the management of. So walk us through, and maybe Mr. Chandler, why do we have staff in urban renewal now? Why wouldn't this be a time to move a person or something into Public Works and, is kind of the point person for managing the contractees? I know it's a broad philosophical, but could you help us understand why we're still going with full staff?
I'm going to let Mr. Olson answer as far as what they are doing now and what they will be doing over the near future, and then I'm going to address a policy issue that we have put forward to you. So we'll address what they do now.
Oh, okay. So I think that you're on the right track, and there will be, although we are scheduled to continue until 2024, I think there will be a time well before that where staff could be eliminated, and for example, then there's just going to be bonds that need to be paid off. At this point, we still probably have about $2 to $3 million worth of discretionary funds. We've got $7 more million that can be spent on projects. We've identified the majority of that will go towards Public Works projects to work on infrastructure towards the north end of town. But we do still have $2 or $3 million worth of funding that we can do to help complete some of those projects that we didn't think we were going to be able to get to. For example, mostly the ones like we're working on right now are the ones from Cutler City, which was the last pearl that we did the community visioning in. In addition to that is our loan program and our grant program and on those sorts of economic development thing that we hope we can continue to get more involved in over the years.
And one policy issue, it's not really before you as a committee, but we will be bringing it up before the City Council, and that is to consider the idea of whether or not we should explore creating another urban renewal district as this one begins to expire. There's been great benefits that have come through this, and we don't know the answer yet on whether or not that is something we ought to do, but we have felt that we want to proceed and look at that, and so that's something we'll be bringing up with the City Council. I guess they're a renewal agency, isn't it?
I believe that is City Council initiated.
With the City Council to begin looking at that process.
Did we get through all the portions of the urban renewal budget?
We have been.
Okay.
We've been through it all now, and so if you are ready to approve this and make that recommendation to the Urban Renewal Agency to approve it, the board, there's two parts to that. First, the budget has been amended to reflect the appropriations for the community center. If there are other amendments you would like to make, those would need to be made at this time, and then we would vote on each of those individually. Once that's done, if there are no other amendments, or even if there are amendments, then the motion would be two parts. The first is to approve the budget as amended, and then the second is dealing with the incremental value that comes to us, and the statements you would need to make is something along these lines. I move to approve the budget as amended, and that 20% of the estimated incremental value in the amount of $44,552,600 be used to calculate the division of the tax. That's the second part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Ward?
Mr. Olson? You guys are sewn together. Rubber band together.
Right.
I'm first-time budget person on this, so bear with me. Is there anything structurally in this budget that would prohibit the Urban Renewal Agency from working with, say, the community center on their new water park project? Or I'm just saying different opportunities may come up in the next year. Is there anything in here that stops that or makes it cumbersome?
I'm not aware of anything.
Okay,
no.
that was it.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve and send to the Urban Renewal Agency the amended budget for the Urban Renewal Agency.
Mr. Ryan, did you want to include the 20%?
That's a separate motion, I believe.
Okay, all right. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the budget, to recommend to the City Council that the budget...
No, to the Urban Renewal Agency.
Urban Renewal Agency, thank you. Recommend to the Urban Renewal Agency that the budget as amended be approved.
Madam Chair, who seconded it?
I'll second it.
No, someone
somebody
already
did.
did. Was it Stacy?
Stacy?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Baird. And roll call, please.
Anderson?
Yes.
Excuse me. Baird? Davis. Let's see, Chester, or Norikis.
Yes.
Quant.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Walke.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I apologize, excuse me, Madam Chair, I apologize. Whatever, there's a scent of something, a cleaning solvent or something that came drifting in here, and I can barely breathe. That's what I'm
Yeah.
having an issue with at the moment.
It's very strong.
I've got some water. I don't know what it is, but I noticed that the other day when I went on a coughing spell. And if, I can't remember the proper wording, but if you would like to read it, and I will move that we accept that word. Oh, you have the wording, okay.
Yep.
Because I know there's specific wording that you do. Madam Chair, I move to approve the urban renewal budget as presented. And that the 20% of the estimate, okay, so I move to approve that, I don't know, how do you
Mr. Ryan, I think you would need to simply say, I move that the 20%.
Okay. I move that the 20% of the estimated incremental value in the amount of $44,552,600 be used to calculate the division of tax for the urban renewal agency.
Here, second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. It's been moved and seconded that the Urban Renewal Budget Committee recommend to the Urban Renewal Agency that 20% of the estimated incremental value in the amount of $44,552,600 be used to calculate the division of tax.
Okay, Baird. Davis.
Yes.
Norikis.
Yes.
Quant.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Walke.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any other comments from Urban Renewal Budget Committee members? Right? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Norikis.
I'd like to thank staff for putting this together for us and thank the Budget Committee for sitting through and sifting through the information. Thank you all.
Yeah. And no one has anything else further, we'll adjourn. Got 20 minutes.
Susan.